So in the previous class, we were talking about the classification of ceramics, right? How we going to classify or how we going to put the ceramic materials or different types of ceramics into different categories and according to application or according to different varieties which are available, according to fusion temperatures, according to where the ceramic materials are used for and what for they have been used, and according to the microstructure and various processing techniques. According to various processing techniques, how we're going to classify this ceramics. So first we're going to come across. First we're going to talk about these ceramic materials in per se. That is, uh, we have discussed about the composition of ceramics. So they're basically made of feldspar, kaolin, and quartz, and other color non-metallic oxides, and some color frits in them. So that is a basic composition of a ceramic material. So when we are adding a feldspar that is with non-metallic oxides such as sodium or potassium or calcium, so that particular ceramic becomes, if we are adding a sodium dioxide, it becomes soda feldspar. If we are adding potassium dioxide, it becomes potash feldspar. And if at all we are adding calcium dioxide, it becomes uh, lime feldspar. So all these ceramic materials, they are called as feldspathic porcelain, because feldspar is the main ingredient along with quartz, kaolin, and other color frits added to that. So these materials are called as feldspathic porcelains. So these feldspathic porcelains, they are mainly used as veneering ceramics. I hope you understand yesterday. I mean, I hope you understand from the previous class uh, what do we mean by veneering ceramics. If at all, if we are using a substructure, on top of that we are adding a different material uh, which uh, which gets bonded to the structure below it. That in itself is called as a veneering material. So when we are talking about fixed partial dentures, where we are having metal framework which is known as the substructure, on top of that metal framework we are adding ceramic material as a veneering or as a layering material, so that the metal structure, it helps in holding the ceramic material on top of that, so that it gives the a good aesthetic result, or it gives a tooth uh, color material on it lets a tooth color material to be layered on top of the metal structure, so that it matches to the adjacent teeth. So these feldspathic porcelains are basically used as veneering materials or veneering ceramics on top of metal structures or on top of other ceramic materials as such. Other ceramic materials, in a sense, we have a category where we talked about oxide ceramics, or partially crystalline ceramics or completely crystalline ceramics. So on top of these ceramic materials also we can layer these feldspathic porcelains. So these are the materials which can be bonded to other underlying substructures that can be metal or ceramic. So that those ceramics are called as veneering ceramics. So feldspathic porcelains are basically veneering ceramics. So these feldspathic porcelains, basically they are veneering ceramics which can be veneered onto either metal substructures or ceramic substructures. So how exactly this bonding happens between ceramic and metal, or ceramic and ceramic material as in itself? So there are altogether four types of mechanism by which this bonding occurs between metal substructure to ceramic and ceramic to ceramic also. So the first one being ionic bonding, the second one between uh, metal and ceramic layering ceramic material. It's mechanical retention, that means the roughness of the uh, underlying surface. That also makes difference during bonding. So the first one being ionic bonding, the second one being mechanical retention, the third one being van der Waals forces, and the fourth one being a coefficient of thermal expansion, which plays a pivotal role uh, for bonding of ceramic material to the underlying metal substructure or ceramic substructures. So these are the four different ways. Uh, these are the four different ways how exactly these veneer ceramics they get binded or they get bonded to the underlying substructures. So the first one being ionic bonding, that is uh, that's the strongest of the bonds. I think we all know about what is ionic bonding and a covalent bonding and what are van der Waals forces. All these things. So the ionic bonding happens between different metal oxides because ceramic being uh, uh, a 4 plus uh, cation. So it has four extra protons, which can be two can be given and two can be shared with. So this metal oxide, uh, the ionic bonding happens between silica crystals and other non-metallic oxides or metallic oxides which are present in the substructures. So that is the ionic bonding, and van der Waals forces which are very weak, that can happen between different atoms, and mechanical retention, that is because of the roughness of the frameworks which helps in holding the material together, and coefficient of thermal expansion, because every material expands uh, and contracts after cooling once they contract, but they contract toward different levels at different temperatures or at different levels or different extents. So because of this difference between the coefficient of thermal expansion between two different materials, they can hold on to each other. So these are the four different ways how veneering ceramic gets bonded to the underlying structure. So the all ceramic restoration, I am just showing you the photograph how they look. The difference between an all ceramic restoration and the metal restoration, you can see here. This is what happens once a ceramic gets bonded onto the metal structure. If it is a metal structure, it is seen something like this, and if it is a veneering ceramic getting bonded to a ceramic substructure, this is how it looks. So difference between these two comes in translucencies. Okay, so you can see that opaqueness over here with metal substructure, but you don't see that in a ceramic substructure. So here we can see different different ceramic materials, how they are getting classified according to their composition, or how they are getting classified according to the processing procedures. We see here these are silicate ceramics. Silicate ceramics are nothing but uh, glass ceramics with other crystalline oxides in them, crystalline different with different crystalline phases in them. So how we classify these ceramics according to processing procedures? So the main processing procedure is sintering, the next one being casting, next one being pressing, and the other thing is CAD camming, that is computer aided designing and computer aided milling. And in these oxide ceramics, we have only CAD-CAM technology in itself. That's it. We cannot manufacture these ceramics, or we cannot fabricate any restorations out of these ceramics in any other procedures other than CAD-CAMing technology. Okay, so we're going to see how exactly all these processes uh, happen. So the first one being condensing and sintering. So this is a main procedure or main method of fabricating ceramic restorations. So which is known as condensing and sintering of the material. As you can see here, this is a ceramic powder. This pink substance what you are seeing here in this picture here. This is a ceramic powder which has been formed into a paste and which has been applied onto the surface of either metal or ceramic substructure, and a proper shape had been given to the material, and we have to place those restorations with that layered ceramic in this furnace over here. So when we place those restorations in this furnace at certain temperature, they're going to get baked. That is, they're going to get heated at certain temperatures, so that we get a proper restoration like this what you are seeing over here. Okay, in previous class I was talking about different ceramic ceramics according to their use. We were talking about opaque, we were talking about dentine, we were talking about enamel and all those things. So you can see all those things in this picture. Whenever you are forming a restoration over any metal substructure or ceramic substructure, we are going to use different kinds of ceramic materials with different coefficients of thermal expansion to get a whole anatomy of the tooth. So accordingly, we have given a color coding for each and every material. So we're going to see the yellow thing which is known as opaque over here, that is opaque dentine. Then we have pink which is a dentine. Then we have a blue material which is known as enamel. Then what you are seeing here, these green ones, they're added, uh, they are basically those color frics to form those mamelons in the tooth to give the distinction for uh, the tooth structure. So we use different kinds of layering ceramics to form the entire anatomy of the tooth. So before baking, this is going how it is going to look. A restoration when we are forming, this is how it is going to look before baking. But once we put it in furnace and uh, heat this slurry to certain temperatures according to the manufacturer's instructions, the end product will be like this what you are seeing here. So the next processing technique is casting. I think you all know how this happens. We have a wax pattern which is invested, then we put it in a preheating furnace, we take the wax out and then flow the metal into it with the help of a centrifugal casting machine. So this is how it's going to happen. And if you're talking about a pressing, which is known as another fabrication method, we the procedure is going to be similar, but the furnace what we are going to use is going to look like this. So I'll just take you through the procedure how this happens. So this is the wax pattern what you are seeing, the fabrication of wax pattern for any indirect restoration. For that can be an inlay, that can be an onlay, that can be a full crown, any of these indirect restoration. So first we form a wax pattern, then we're going to invest that wax pattern, then we're going to preheat the investment or the burnout of the investment to take the wax out. So how we have metal pellets, in the similar way we have these ceramic pellets. What you can see here, according to the shade, we have different colors of the ceramic pellets. We're going to put those ceramic pellets into this investment material here, and because ceramic is a viscous liquid, more of a matrix kind of thing, we have to use a weight on top of the ceramic pellet, so that once the ceramic gets liquefied, because of this weight, the ceramic will flow into the ingot. So this is the furnace what we use. This is the furnace what we use for uh, fabricating ceramic restorations for pressing procedures, which is also known as heat pressing. So this is the final product. Once the substructure is formed in ceramic material, this is how it is going to look. It's going to be similar to that of a flowing an alloy into the ingot, but only thing is they look bit grayish, and these structures, they look uh, in whatever shade uh, in whatever shaded pellets we use to flow the ingot with. So these are the different kinds of headings under which the ceramics can be classified according to the composition. The one thing is silicate ceramics, the other thing is oxide ceramics. Oxide ceramics, I have already told you, these are purely made up of uh, only a particular type of metallic oxides. That is, sometimes you can call them as aluminous oxide ceramics. Sometimes, according to the composition, you can call them as zirconium dioxide ceramics. But there is one other class of ceramics where we have a matrix with only glass particles infiltrated into those ceramic matrix. So these filler particles, they can be again of say alumina or zirconia or lithium disilicate, any of these things. See, the difference between these two is complete oxide ceramics, where you have only one type of metal oxide, and in the other we have a viscous state with only crystals of glass, only dispersion of crystals of glass in the uh, entire matrix. So the glass infiltrations into those matrix. So that is the main difference between a partially crystalline ceramics and completely crystalline ceramics. So in these oxide ceramics, why we have got this category of ceramics is we can form them into a long span bridges, what you have seen here. So they have better flexural strength, because earlier in general properties of ceramics we have seen, we have been talking about that ceramics will have less flexural strength, less tensile strength, and less shear strength. All these things are negatives or for a ceramic materials. So they have to they cannot be formed into a long span bridges. But with the advent of this oxide ceramics, we can form this long span bridges also, a 3-unit bridge or a 4-unit bridge or a single crown also, but they can be formed into a long span bridges. But only disadvantage is low transparency over here. These oxide ceramics, they are not very much transparent or translucent such as glass ceramics. So you can see various types of these oxide ceramics which are partially crystalline and which are completely crystalline. Completely crystalline, we have individual elements of aluminum oxide and zirconium dioxide ceramic. But where you have a glass infiltrated ceramics, that means you are having a glass matrix with a partial crystals dispersed in that matrix. So that is the difference between these two ceramics, two different types of ceramic materials. So while coming to processing techniques, we have seen hot pressing and sintering both. So the other thing what we are concerned about is computer aided designing and computer aided milling. How this happens. So this you can see, these are blocks of ceramics which are half baked. That means partially baked blocks of ceramic materials or oxide ceramic materials. These are available in these rectangular or square shaped blocks in the market. So we're going to design our restorations on the monitor. What you can see over here. See, you can see on the computer monitor over here where we have a design of a we have the design of restoration over here. That can be a fixed partial denture or an inlay or an onlay. So this is a virtual design of the restoration over here. So this design we create and we give a command to the machine, milling machine. So we have material like this, like these blocks over here. So according to the design, the burrs, they cut the design in these blocks. So that's what you have seen here. So this is the design what we have formed on top of the virtual model on the computer monitor, and we have given a command for the milling machine to cut the design in these blocks. And these things are again invested and they'll be sintered. So because these are partially sintered blocks, we have to sinter them completely. That means we have to uh, uh, get a half baked stage into a completely baked stage, because these materials will have a uh, green stick green stick strength, but they won't be able to bear all the occlusion load. So they have to be baked completely, or they have to be sintered completely at higher temperatures to get a proper substructure, so that we can veneer our ceramic material onto these substructures. So this is how CAD camming can happen, that is uh, computer aided designing and computer aided milling. So the procedure or the technique is same. We're going to carve everything out of a block, but it has to be sintered completely before getting it into the patient's mouth. So these are the different processing methods what we use to manufacture different restorations. So in the next class, we're going to see about how to strengthen these ceramic materials.